Welcome, everyone, to our Great Mystery Online Salon with Hollister Rand, the Healing Heart of Mediumship. Hollister is an internationally renowned medium known for her extraordinary detailed work. She provides specific messages from loved ones living in the spirit world with feeling, heart, and grace. She started seeing and speaking with spirits as a young girl and is clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient, meaning that she can see, hear, and feel the presence of spirits as well as get a sense of their personalities, emotions, physical attributes, and illnesses. Her book, I'm Not Dead, I'm Different, is a compilation of communications from kids in the spirit world and what they have to teach us about living in a better life on Earth. You can find out more about her after this program by going to her website, hollisterrand.com. And it's my pleasure now to introduce you to Hollister. Hollister, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, Robin, thank you for having me, and thank you for that kind introduction.
You started seeing spirits when you were a young girl. I understand that they were lining up outside your bedroom. You know, how did your journey begin with this?
Well, my journey began in a very wonderful way. When my grandfather passed, who I loved very, very dearly, and who loved me in return, when he passed, he showed up at the foot of my bed and said goodnight to me as he always had. And I was quite young at the time, and people were trying to explain to me, your grandfather has passed, he's died, he's gone to be with Jesus in heaven, and I could not understand that concept because I was seeing him every night. And then he brought a little boy with him, and it turned out that that little boy, the first child I ever saw in spirit, was actually my own uncle who had died at the age of 6. And so my grandfather was bringing him. When I mentioned that to my mother, it was suggested that I not talk to the spirits anymore.
Wow. So there was a lot of fear with what do you think that fear is related to? That it will like kind of encourage death or?
I really do think that people, because now mediumship is much more mainstream. It's much more accepted. But when I was a child, not so much. And what I've discovered now is that the talents for mediumship, the sensitivity for mediumship often comes down in families like any other talent, like singing and dancing. So my mother and my grandmother were all also very sensitive, and I think they hadn't come to terms with that.
Is this something that can be developed?
I love that you're asking this because I just finished a 2-day workshop in mediumship development, and I have 3 more days to go. So it's a 5-day workshop over 2 weekends. And I sat down with an afterlife scientist at dinner one night, and I said to him, look, I can't stay any longer because I've got to get up and teach mediumship in the morning. And he stopped me and he said, you can teach this? I said, yeah, no, I just take their money and I pretend. Of course I can teach this. You know, we are all wired to connect with the spirits. We all have the ability to do it to some degree. And so what we are born with, the talent we're born with, can absolutely be developed, like an innate dancing talent or singing talent or any other kind of talent.
Uh-huh. So probably we are conditioned, you know, whether we accept it or not. That probably has a big factor.
Well, what I find so interesting in my travels throughout the world is that more people are having connections with loved ones in spirit than you would ever know. So I will talk with high-level executives in companies. I will talk with people from all walks of life. And when they get me alone, they'll start sharing their experiences. So there are those who are very vocal, but there's an entire group of people who are having personal experiences. And that's what's exciting me. That's what's exciting to me, because it's no longer the work of the medium. The spirits are doing what they really want to do, which is making connections directly with their loved ones here.
You know, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, because it feels from our perspective in this 3D realm, let's say we have loved ones like your grandfather, and, you know, he lived to, let's say, 70 or 80 or however long he lived, and then he he crossed over on the other side. And then on the other side, somehow I think we get this image from Sunday school, my experience, that just continues. Then they just stay 70, 80 or whatever on the other side, rather than, so what happens if they incarnate and reincarnate rather, and it'd be great to get some clarity on how you see this.
Yes, because, well, the fears that we have about not being able to see our loved ones or having them in a place where they are inaccessible, and even if that place is reincarnated here on the earth plane, that is actually contrary to what the spirits have shown me. In some cultures, the spirits have let me know that they do reincarnate very quickly. Now, that is the choice within a certain religious belief. So there are some Eastern cultures where someone passes and they come right back. But in those cultures, people are expecting them to come back, and they welcome them. Oh, there's Grandpa. He just was born, and now his name is, whatever. So, but they're waiting for him. So there's that understanding. Here in the West, it seems like we're a little bit slower on the uptake, I have to say. And the idea is, I will wait for you. I hear that time and again. I will wait for you. And we seem to come back in groups. So it's as though we wait for everybody to get there, and then we sort of sit down and go, okay, so now what next? How are we going to play the next round of games?
Mm-hmm. So like in soul groups.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is why I just don't think we have to be worried ever about being disconnected from the people who are important to us. It's just not the way the universe works. There is connection at all levels. And when the spirits have shown me how communication works and how life works with this side and the other side, they've shown me all of these lines of communications and networks upon networks and light and sound, which create sort of latitude and longitude, bringing you to a specific place in the afterlife. So things are far less chaotic than we would think, and we are connected in far more discernible ways than we might think.
And what, like we have an image, for example, when my mother passed, and I was with her when she left her, I felt her leave her body. When I felt her leave her body, I felt that she filled up the whole room. It was like, oh my goodness, this is who my mother really is.
That's exactly right.
It wasn't, so these, as a spirit, can we be, well, much more than we are as a person, or different?
We're tremendously expanded. Consciousness really does exist well beyond the limitations of our body, and that's what the spirits have shown me. They've also demonstrated that they're not necessarily location-based, so they can be with more than one person at a time. And there are several reasons that I know this, but one of the more stunning examples was with a family who came to see me, a mother, father, a sister, brother, and it was another brother, a young man in the family who had passed. And he told me what each of them had been doing at 8:30 that morning. He had checked in on each of them because what I didn't know was that the mother was worried if he was with her, then he wouldn't be with his father, or he wouldn't be guiding his other brother. So each person in the family was a little worried, if I'm being selfish and keeping him to myself, he can't be with his other loved ones. That is not the case. We cannot limit spirit.
So that would also be like, let's say, if like these children that you've communicated with from the other side, if a parent has a child that dies, let's say, David dies. I mean, that spirit could also possibly, I'm assuming, if it's reincarnated or not, be the child of another woman, maybe in another country, or, I mean...
Yeah, the spirits that I speak to don't often talk about that because, as I said, we here in this country and in the West, we tend to come in groups. It's really, really unlikely that a mother's son turns around and, gets reincarnated unless it's in an area where that's expected. One of the things the spirits talk to me about is connection connection, 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 and an expanded way of being where we are all connected. So the one thing that they're very clear about is that we do not become disconnected, that is an illusion. Disconnection is an illusion, and it's brought about by the limitations of the physical body.
Uh-huh. Can you share with us some of the special messages that you've received?
Well, oh my goodness, there are so many. And in my book, I'm Not Dead, I'm Different, when HarperCollins asked me to write this book, I thought, wow, kids in spirit, that could be seen as a heavy subject. But what I really wanted was to put together a lot of messages that sort of instructed us or showed us how the other side works, how love prevails, how to work and live at the love frequency, how to be connected with our loved ones. And in fact, the back of the book has different exercises to do that. But one of the things we get hung up on in our lives here is how people die. And so we get stuck at their death experience. And Robin, you are extremely fortunate in that when your mother passed and you're being there, which is a tremendous gift when you're present at someone's passing, but there are many people who are not present and feel as though, you know, their loved one sort of passed away without them, especially children who die in accidents, their parents, if I had been there, maybe something could have changed, or suicide. So in the book, I broke it up into chapter after chapter dealing with the ways people die and the messages that come through related to that. So, oops, what kids say about dying by accident. Who's your daddy? When bloodlines matter, when they don't. By my own hand. Kids in the afterlife talk about suicide. We shall overcome addictions in life and death. Peer pressure. How kids in spirit help kids on earth. Over before it started. Aborted, miscarried, and stillborn children speak. So it's so interesting, out of the mouths of babes, and it's just amazing to me the wisdom the kids in spirit have for us.
Uh-huh. Are there any specific stories you'd like to share?
Well, I think one of the things that really, really struck me was I was doing a large event, and there was a man sitting in the front. I just get emotional even thinking about this. He was sitting in front with a woman who I later found out was his wife. And this girl, about 4 years old, was running around him so quickly, I could hardly see her. She was 4 years old. And she started talking to me. She gave me her name. I think we have her named as Alicia in the book. And she started talking about how her father had been hoping for a little boy, but then when she arrived, he loved this little girl. She talked about other members of her family. She talked about her toys that she had. She talked about how special she was. And then, all of a sudden, before my eyes, she became a baby who was in her father's arms, the man sitting before me. And I said, I don't know how to explain this, but this little 4-year-old child has become a baby in your arms. And she says to me, in one breath, you gave me enough love for a lifetime. Oh. Well, it turned out that when that child was born, he held her, she took a breath, and she died in his arms. And before she was born, all of his hopes and dreams for her, all of the toys, everything that he had. She was so loved when she came here that with that one breath here on this earth plane, she literally basked and lived and died in the love that was presented and continued to grow up in the afterlife, keeping pace with another girl in the family who was also born at the same time. And interestingly enough, they had just celebrated what would have been her 4th birthday.
Wow.
I know. So love is not based in time. Love transcends death. I mean, that message so really sort of shook me to the core because it causes me to rethink a lot of things in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I have been practicing and working at the frequency of love, and it is actually a frequency. And so I joke and I say to people, I'm the GPS to the good neighborhoods on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Because with that love frequency, the only spirits allowed to show up are those who have our highest and greatest good at their core. And even those who may have had difficulties with us in this life, if they are able to show up, there has been a change. One of the things I love so much about spirit work. One of the things I find so interesting, because it is a healing modality, what we do here, in the here and now on this earth plane, affects the spirits and it affects future generations. There is no time as we perceive it. It's not a linear kind of a thing. And so what happens here at this moment in time affects everything. So an addiction that we heal here on this earth plane affects addictions even for those who have passed, and helps heal that quality and that proclivity in future generations. What we do here is very powerful. These incarnations are very powerful here.
Oh, somebody was asking me to ask you, because we hear so much about how wonderful the afterlife is. If it's so wonderful over there, what are we doing over here?
Well, I would say the same thing about a woman who's pregnant and goes through childbirth. Nobody wants to go through the pain of childbirth, but the end result is so glorious. We choose to reincarnate here because the end result is so glorious. With this incarnation here, we literally shift consciousness throughout the eons. This is a very, very special place in time to be. When we work with limitations and when we choose those limitations, we are then learning very, very specific things which inform the entire network in the afterlife. And it is sometimes only within those limitations that those lessons are able to be learned.
Uh-huh. You said something earlier when you were sharing that story that brought up a question for me. So if a child dies young, or there's a miscarriage or an abortion, it continues to grow as if it were here? I mean, it continues to...
It can. Yes, it can. Does not have to. And in the case of miscarried or aborted children, not necessarily. Sometimes they will show up as almost like little stars around the people who have lost them. Mm-hmm. And they will often be joy guides for people here on this earth plane. There was a lady who came to me, and I thought she had been a kindergarten teacher or a nursery school teacher where there had been a disaster, because there were so many little children around her in spirit of varying ages. And I thought, what on earth is this? Mm-hmm. It turns, I said, they keep saying joy to me, and that you have another little one at home. And she says, oh, I know who they are. They're my little joys. They are all my children who were miscarried. I wasn't able to have a pregnancy run the whole 9 months until just recently. I now have a child, a little boy. And so all of these little joys were showing up in her life, and you can bet that they will be guiding her little one who made it here to the earth plane.
I was wondering if each of us as a human, as a soul, is actually like a mature, complete soul, but we go through the process of the experience, as a baby, a toddler, an adolescent, an adult, an elder. But if what you were saying about that little girl who was, died at the first breath and then is now 4, that's different.
What the spirits have shown me is we get out of the incarnation, no matter how short or how long it is, what is required for our life path. So we don't have to worry about missing our destiny. It's just too big. We can't miss our destiny. So whether we're here for a short time or a long time, there are people who do not need to be or choose not to be here for a long time. So in the case of Sid's death, I had one young spirit come through. And I say young spirit, that's almost not correct. It's just they come through as young because that's how we relate to them in their family. But they could be very old souls. But one young girl who passed before she was 2 actually sort of let me know she was too big for her body and she was vibrating too quickly, and she just sort of took off. And that can happen sometimes in SIDS deaths or in situations where people don't even know why someone has passed. People can go like that.
Uh-huh. And could you speak a little bit about suicide? I know that there's a lot of teenage suicide, or there's more happening now. And
yes, the biggest challenge for us with suicide is that it feels as though the last word has been spoken and there's nothing more to say. And what I've learned from loved ones in spirit is that they so desperately want to start the conversation again. One of the more dramatic situations that I had when I was a young medium, I went to a sweet little town in California where you think nothing ever happens. And the first message there was for a lady whose husband and son had both committed suicide in exactly the same way, by gun. I know, and I thought, well, okay, so much for this sweet little town where nothing happens. This lady was very, very, very angry, and I share this this message in the book. Very, very, very angry, and how I dare bring them through, and how dare they come and discuss that they love her. How could they if they left her? And there's really no answer to that other than they don't necessarily explain their passing, but they offer a continued conversation. And those who pass with suicide understand, receive our anger, and what they want to do is step up in a way and take responsibility for the love that they themselves could not receive here on the earth plane and maybe not return.
Uh-huh. Oh, great. Thank you. We have a question from Regina.
Sure.
How do you distinguish to what entity you are having contact? I mean, male, female, human, alien?
Correct. In my workshop, oh, hi, Regina, how are you? In my workshop, I work very, very specifically with people. We go for 5 pieces of evidential proof before providing a message. So when you're working specifically with loved ones, there is a way that they will show up for me because I've been doing this so long, I've come up with sort of a shortcut. If someone stands here, they're in father's side of the family. I will get a sense, male, female, a relationship, father, uncle, that kind of thing. Tall, short, things they may have liked, foods that they liked, and all of that kind of thing before then presenting the information. It's very important to know to whom you're speaking. Otherwise, the message can mean absolutely nothing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. In her question, she did make something interesting. What about alien?
Well, that is an interesting point. Aliens were something I had never considered as a medium because I saw my role as specifically connecting to loved ones who had passed. And then I had a spirit say to me, we are all aliens because we are not from there. And I went, well, that's interesting. So there's an identification with not being an earthling when people pass. So I was like, wow, that's interesting. So there could be a genesis that goes beyond anything that we understand. And I'll give you another example, because I'm really, for myself, I am not clear on the alien thing. I really am not. So it's only in relation to what loved ones in spirit have told me. So I have to clarify that. I had a phone session with a lady, and 3 gold balloons showed up in my office as I was speaking with her on the phone. And I said to her, I do not know what to tell you about this, but I have 3 gold balloons, and their names start with Z. And she said, oh, I know exactly who you're talking about. I'm writing a book about aliens, and they come to me as gold balloons, and their names have Z's. So that's the best I can do. I can only report what I have been shown. So all I can tell people is there's a lot more out there than we really know, and more than we have been shown. I really do think, and the spirits have told me this, the other side, what we call the other side, is immense. There are levels upon levels. There are things that we cannot understand here. So every message that we receive, and every message that I receive, has to be given in a way that we can understand it. And the more our consciousness here on this earth plane grows and expands, the more they can present to us. And that is why it is important for us to expand our consciousness and be willing to grow and change and be open and flexible, because then it allows them to show us information in a new way.
Right. Do you think, what do you think about orbs?
Well, I don't have to think much about orbs. All I know is that they show up in photographs, and spirits have identified themselves as orbs. And with some orb photographs, I have expanded the orbs and found faces within them. A friend of mine sent me a photograph. He said, I'm trying to sell this piece of furniture on Craigslist, and every time I take a photo, there are all these, it looks like there are bubbles flying out of this thing, and it's, you know, I can't, how can I sell this piece of furniture with all these bubbles around it? Well, I looked, I said, well, there's a person that seems associated with this cabinet, and I have a sense there's something in the cabinet that belongs to this person. And it turned out he had a bracelet, which was either from World War I or World War II, I'm not sure. But when we blew up the orbs, we could see it looked like the face of a sailor, like a French sailor. And the face was moving in the orbs, so there was movement with his face. And so we did actually connect with this male, with this sailor, and the bracelet was something his wife had. And when he returned from war, his wife and his child had been killed in an accident where birthday candles burned down their house. So we were able to connect. The family was together. He was released, and the piece of furniture got sold on Craigslist. Happy ending.
Yes. Regina has another question. She'd like to know if you always use all of your sensitivities to know.
Do I always use all of my sensitivities? I do my best to use my clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, clairgustance, clairalience. I use all of those, but will often switch between them. Each of us has a dominant sense. Very often it's sight. I have my dear friend lost her sight at the age of 19, and we used to have discussions. Which would you rather lose, your sight or your hearing? Well, she loves music so much that actually sound, you know, that clairaudience was so important to her. So what's interesting is even if we have a disability here on this earth plane, there are blind mediums who can actually see color. So it's not necessarily even related to our physical bodies. But what I find interesting is just as we have signature senses that we use, so do the spirits. So if there was a man here on this earth plane who passes and is very, very thoughtful and quiet, when he comes to me, he may not come clairaudiently. He may not yak at me like somebody else who was a big talker. He may stand there silently, so I need to use my clairvoyance to see him, get descriptive information, and my clairsentience to pick up things about his personality and things like that. So the spirits will communicate very much the way they did when they were here on this earth plane.
Aha. And what were those last other 2 senses that you mentioned that I hadn't heard before?
Clairgustance, yeah, clairalience, sense of smell and taste. Now, they're terribly underused and I think can be very beneficial to people. For a while, when I wanted to really work on my sense of taste from the other side, the spirits kept showing up and giving me recipes. And so I would be in a demonstration, I'd say, well, your grandmother, and give all this evidence, and I'd say, and I'm getting this taste like pralines, but wow, I'm also tasting bourbon. And it turns out that bourbon was the secret ingredient of her pralines. Imagine that. So I got to taste a lot of ethnic foods without gaining an ounce, which was fabulous.
How lovely. Wow.
You know,
Well,
just talking about the spirits heats me up. You know, when you feel the spirits around you, temperatures will change, and mediums will often get very, very heated. So if my glasses steam up, that's what's happening.
It sounds like there's a quality of playfulness with the spirits, or...
Oh, absolutely. You know, people think that mediumship is serious. And you know what? Spirit connection is a serious business. It's a healing modality. But mediums and spirits do not have to be serious. And one of the reasons is that laughter helps set aside our grief and grievance and allows gratitude to make the connection. And I'll give you an example. I was doing a demonstration, and there was a lady sitting in the front row. And I said something stupid, as I often do, and everybody laughed. And as this lady laughed, I saw a man pop up beside her and started speaking with him. He was her husband. I found out later, and it was just a lovely visit. It was just so nice, and he was such a lovely man. I really enjoyed it. And I found out later that she had been to a number of well-known mediums, and these were people I knew. So I knew the quality of their mediumship. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, she could not get a connection with her husband. It had nothing to do with the mediumship, but it had everything to do with her grief and with her grievance. This was wrong that he left me. But when she left for that moment, he saw his opportunity. Aha, she's laughing. She forgot she's sad. Here I am. And it means he was there the whole time. He was there the whole time. It was just she had to forget her grief for 1 second before he could be recognized.
Is there any general message that you think the spirits are trying to communicate to us?
Oh, absolutely. It is about shifting consciousness, living in gratitude, living in gratitude and living without fear are the two major messages that come through. And they're not often, it's not as though a spirit will come through and say, live in gratitude and don't live in fear. A personal message coming through may be, in my life, I lived with limitations. And I'll give you an example. There was a person who came to me, a father, and his father came through and talked about how in a world war he lost his leg. And he mentioned how after that he never succeeded. He never moved forward. He was limited. His leg limited him. He could never move forward in life. And he said, and now your son is in the hospital with a leg that's shriveling up. He can't use it, and there's no medical reason. And your son keeps saying, I can't go forward because of my leg. And the father said, that's exactly right. And so we worked with forgiveness right there. That grandfather came through and said, I am choosing to live without fear. I have learned that there are no limitations to who we are. I'm removing that limitation and that fear of moving forward in life. And I heard later that that son, indeed, that lost the limitation. His leg became strong again. He was able to move forward through life fearlessly. That's what the spirits do.
Would you say that that's one of our purposes here?
I think that it's a purpose that has many expressions, I would say. So the purpose truly is to extend the frequency of love at which we live in the afterlife to every living being here on the earth plane. From the ants to, and I mean ANTS, and it was also the AUNTS, so the ants and the antes, to everyone, even the people we dislike, who may be our greatest gift and our greatest teachers. So the overwhelming message and purpose for each and every one of us here on this earth plane is self-love and compassion, extending forward to everyone, every being here. Because in that love and in that gratitude, we will be in absolute, eternal, present connection with ourselves and with Spirit. I really do think that that's our purpose here. And if you look at all of our lives, every lesson we learn has to do with a deficit of love or an overwhelming love. It's about love in imbalance. So either lack of self-love or overwhelming love for someone else at the expense of ourselves. So bringing love into perfect balance here on this earth plane, I really do think is the Spirit's message overall. It's in that balance that we find ourselves, that we are expanded, and that we are connected.
Do you feel from your experience that when someone crosses over, let's say if they were living in limitation and fear, that all of a sudden, with the experience of death, of, being in the spirit world, that those limitations are removed and they have an awareness of love?
They absolutely can be removed. As one young man in spirit told me, dying doesn't make you nice. And I thought, well, now that's interesting. When I was younger, I did a lot of house clearing. I met some spirits who frankly weren't nice. So the idea of someone who is very, very limited and conflicted here on the earth plane, passing and possibly having a huge epiphany is absolutely possible. Everything is possible. However, there are people who will choose to hold on to their limitations of anger, bitterness, those types of things, and will also limit their access to the love which is available. So what I have seen is some people absolutely, it's like the blinders come off. And with some, it happens over what we would think is a period of time, even though there's not time on the other side. But I would say it's a period of revelation. That's what I would say.
Cool. We have another question from Regina. She says, I am not a psychic. I thought that yesterday
Regina, I disagree with that statement. Regina, my dear, I really do think that you are tremendously psychic. I really do think that you have had sensitivities for people all of your life. I really do feel that you live with your heart. You really, really do. And you may very well be an empath, someone who feels things very, very deeply. Where you may trip yourself up if you try to think yourself out of it. And by living with your heart, you may have at sometimes felt very, very overwhelmed. And so you purposely limited that. So I apologize, Robin, for cutting you off. But, oh, boy, Regina, I really do think you are sensitive. And you can yell at me and tell me if you disagree with me. But I have to tell you, as soon as that statement came through, I just had a sense of disagreement with that. You're limiting yourself, my dear.
She says that yesterday she helped a person with a poltergeist in his flat about a deceased woman. This was a total surprise to me.
And this is the woman who says she's not psychic.
She'd like to know what advice you would give her.
Absolutely. The key is, first of all, read everything you can about mediumship. In the back of my book, there's a grounding and protection exercise. Because you live so open-heartedly and because you are willing to be of service and help other people, So I love that I jumped in before we heard the rest of the question, where Miss No, I'm not psychic was releasing spirits of people in houses. Oh, please, So yes, you are. You're absolutely psychic. There are mediumship tendencies here. There's no doubt at all with that. But grounding and protection, very, very important for anybody moving forward in this work.
Right. Billy made a comment that she doesn't think she's psychic either.
My feeling is if you've tuned into this, you absolutely are. And I do believe that being psychic is just a natural part of our humanity. Going back to indigenous peoples, early cultures, the ways that we connected, it's a survival instinct that we have. It's how we connect with water and find water when we need it, an oasis. It's part of how the tribe would be connected. The worship of ancestors, all of this kind of thing. I really do think that it is something we all have that we may have forgotten. So part of what we're doing here on this earth plane is remembering who we are.
Natalie has a question. She says, I have a gift where I can feel the person's energy, even if they are in another state or country and they are thinking about me directly. Where did I get this gift from, and how do I deal with it? It's so annoying sometimes.
Yes. We're talking about clairsentience. The feeling, just as I was saying about Regina here, living in an open-hearted way, it's often our gifts and our talents in the psychic and mediumship realms are sort of a double-edged sword. They're the blessing, but they can also be what we call a curse. And I understand what that is until I learn to set boundaries in my life. And that's really key. The grounding, the protection, and all of that keeps people really out of your space so that the information reaches you out here and you can decide whether you want it, but not here. Does that make sense? So grounding and protection, that's one of the first things I work with my students.
Billy asks, I've been told that for some oh yes, she said yes.
Okay, good.
I've been told that for some reason I have blocked my gifts because of some past life experience. How might I unblock myself to whatever my gifts are in this day?
That's actually a very interesting question. Many people in my classes have had tremendous fear around developing their abilities. Fear, or they have felt blocked. In past incarnations, very often people have been killed, hung, burned at the stake, all of that kind of thing for these very abilities that we're talking about today. So it's not surprising that there are many people who are incarnated now who have had past lives or past memories. It's like, oh boy, I'm not going to do this because last time I got killed for it. One of the things you can do is begin to release the fears around that. And there's a shamanistic practice, and I'll just give it to you very, very, very quickly. But one of the things I do if I recognize that I have blocks or I have ways of thinking is I will end what is a contract. And a contract is simply something that you say, well, I'll never do that again. And if you have passed in a certain way that was, tremendously awful because of these gifts, it could very often be, well, I'm going to be born again, but I'm never doing that again. So I might say something like, I, Hollister Rand, end the contract which states that the abilities that I have to connect psychically and in spirit have the capability or will do me harm and possibly end my life. I end that contract. And then I might create a willing statement. Because wherever you end something, you want to begin something new. So I may say something like, I, Hollister Rand, am willing to walk into the fullness of all of my abilities. Protected, I am willing to learn, and I am willing to be of service, and I'm willing to work at the frequency of love. Now, you can adapt those things however you want, but dealing with them head on, I would recommend that. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, Alberto Villoldo has done some wonderful work, with Peruvian shamans and all of that kind of thing. Can be very helpful with past life stuff, programming within the body, all of that.
So what would you suggest for people to, well, I guess those techniques that you just described, but are there any other techniques or practices or that you would suggest for people to help open up more to communicate with their people who've crossed over?
Absolutely. And in the back of my book, I have a walking meditation called Walking Loud. And it's about being out in nature and connected with the earth. We think that mediums and psychics float around and connect with the spirits somewhere out there, when the truth of the matter is, the more you are in your physical body, the more they can impact your physical body and connect in that way and let you know that they are here. And the more aware you become of them when you are physically in your body. So in the meditation, Walking Loud, find yourself in nature, a park, that kind of thing. If you're comfortable with your feet, with your shoes off, that's even better, your feet in the grass kind of thing. And as you're walking on a, hiking, that kind of thing, really feel your feet and allow yourself to feel the energy of the earth moving up your body as you walk. And you may begin to smell things, you might start smelling flowers because they're there, and then you may start smelling flowers that aren't there, that may have been your mother's favorite flower, your grandmother's flower. You may start smelling roses, things like that. That could be a grandmother or mother showing up. You may start noticing birds doing unusual activities, sort of hummingbirds buzzing your face, things like that. That could also be spirit saying hello. So connecting with nature and being connected to the earth and allowing that energy to naturally open your chakra centers can absolutely help connect you with spirit. That's an easy and safe way. So do the grounding and protection and also the walking in nature. Walking Loud. It's in the book.
Wonderful. Nancy has a question, and I'm going to see if she can ask it directly.
Okay.
Hi. Am I coming through?
Yes.
My only child was murdered several years ago, and I was wondering if I could communicate with her by using a Ouija board. I have friends that have used pendulums, and I haven't been successful with that. And I was wondering what your feelings were about Ouija boards in general. That was dangerous, or?
Well, the bottom line with Ouija boards is that, like any other tool, being protected when you use it, being prepared when you use it, actually setting up boundaries is very, very important. What you may, rather than using a Ouija board, what could be very, very helpful is being very much in your body, doing this walking loud communication. Your daughter really, first of all, she's a lovely girl, I have to say. She didn't have white blonde hair when she was a child, did she? All of a sudden, I saw a child running through here. I do feel that there's another child here who had white blonde hair when she was born, who is also here with her. I'm also seeing an R and an A, so there's an R and an A name that they're giving me in association. So you may know those that name as well, or those initials. So does that make sense to you, those initials?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I do think we're starting, because your daughter's around. As soon as she mentions, you mention her, she's going to make herself known. She has quite a laugh, so she's a very light-hearted person, and you know that. The other thing is she talks to me about wrong place, wrong time. So that may have been said about the situation in which she was in when she passed. So was that the phrase that was used?
Definitely.
Yeah, right, because she just said to me, wrong place, wrong time. Now, she's not saying that that's the truth, but she's saying that that's the phrase that was used in explanation for what happened with her. Now, she's also letting me know that she is a very helpful person. very, very helpful. So she always steps in and helps other people.
That's right.
So that's the other thing, is when this occurred, she was with people she was helping.
Yeah.
So she was around people and she was being of service. That's what she's letting me know. And in essence, she got in the way.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yes. So this is somebody who died the way she lived. She helped people here. She's showing me this big sun and a rainbow. So there's light and there are the colors of the rainbow. So she may come to you with rainbows and with colors like that. So have you seen, you don't collect rainbows, do you? I just see all of these rainbows with her.
No, but she does send rainbows. I see rainbows on my carpet and on my wall.
Okay, so you're surrounded by rainbows, because that's what she's showing me, that she's coming with all of these rainbows. So my dear, you do not need a Ouija board, to communicate with her. She's reaching out to you already. You've also asked to speak with her in your dreams.
Yeah.
Because she tells me she's trying to show up in your dreams. There's also a photo that you either had by your bedside that you had moved around. She said, "You've moved me." So you either had it by you and then you moved it to your bedside, or you then took it with you in the room you're currently in. But she says, "I'm following you. I'm traveling with you." So you've got that photo with you as well. She's also talking to me about the necklace that you have that reminds you of her. So she's showing me that, and I don't know if you have it on, but she's letting me know that you wear this necklace and it helps you feel close to her.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about. She's also showing me a tree growing. She's talking about, remember me with growing things. So there's a tree that she's talking about in particular, and this may actually be in the backyard that she's talking about. But there's a tree, a backyard area, a deck, and a tree. She's talking to me about growing things. So you understand what that is?
I do.
Okay. So she's in that place, in the back area. She is there in that place. She is also there with another young person who passed, by the way. So there is somebody else who is close to her or around her at the time of her passing who is also over there with her. I feel as though there's a male spirit with her, a young male, may have passed in a car crash, by the way. I'm seeing an M name associated with him, may also be Mike or Michael as well. So it's okay if you don't know who that is. He actually might even belong to somebody else within this group today. But very often they will come, the young will come in groups. She's letting me know that there were 3 people around at the time she passed. So there was more than one person at a time. So she's letting me know that. It was very, very quick, she's telling me. So she was out of her body in an instant, she's letting me know. She's also pointing to her chest in 2 places, and I'm not sure why she's giving me 2 spaces, but 2 places in her chest, she's letting me know. She liked to dance when she was young, because she's dancing around like crazy in here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so she's got a lot of energy. She is dancing like, bouncing up and down. And you don't know if she ever also wanted to do like gymnastics or, cheerleading or that kind of thing. Because I feel like she's jumping up and going, yes, hurrah, hurrah. So did she do that kind of thing as well?
Yeah.
All right. So if she is so excited at getting through here to you today, she's also drawing a G in the sky. There's a G name that she's trying to get through here as well. And she's also showing me a small teddy bear. So I do think that you either have a teddy bear of hers or you hold a teddy bear, but she's showing me a teddy bear. So what is that to you?
She collected teddy bears.
That's why she's showing me that. But she's also showing me a teddy bear. It looks like it has her name on it or that kind of thing.
There's one that someone recorded her voice on that we have.
Okay, so she's identified with this particular teddy bear. Do you understand?
I do.
Honey, you do not need a Ouija board. You have your daughter's voice, and that automatically connects you with her. She's around you with rainbows. She comes to you in your dreams. She knows about the photograph. She says you have even slept in her bed. You have worn her clothes. She said, when you wear her jacket, I think it's a jacket, because she shows me you're putting your arms in something. When you put your, so what is it that you're wearing?
A robe.
A robe, okay. Because she gave me this feeling of like a warm jacket or something you're putting your arms in. When you put your arms in there, she is hugging you.
Oh.
That is her way of letting you know I'm there. So you may think that it's you wanting to connect with her putting on that robe. She's letting me know she's connecting, she's inspiring you to do that. Put that warm thing on, Mom. I thought it was a jacket. Put that warm thing on. I'm protecting you. My arms are around you in a big hug. You've got the teddy bear with my voice. I'm coming to you in my dreams. I have not left you, no matter how I have passed. And may I leave you with that, my dear?
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Wow. How special.
I love this girl. I got to say, you know, she is so enthusiastic and just a delight to speak with. So, Nancy, could you do us a favor if you can speak, and take a moment if you can't? Would you just let the other people know how that may have resonated with you and how it may have been different from what you might have expected your daughter to say? What were the points that were important to you?
One thing that, when you talked about her death, because it was somewhat of a mystery, and her trying to help someone because we think that she was giving a ride to someone who ended up was a friend of a friend. And we also think that there was more than one person there, and it hasn't been proven. Mm-hmm.
All right, so you understand she's giving that information. One of the things that I've learned from the spirits is they are much less attached to the way they die. Even if it looks horribly tragic to us, I spoke with a young girl who died helping people in 9/11. She was actually late to work, and the building fell on her. But she ran toward the buildings to help other people. Her energy is a lot like your daughter's in, I will help. That's how I died. I died as I lived. And for them, there's no tragedy in that, nor is there a need to solve it. Because justice is something that we deal here with on this earth plane. The spirits have an expanded view, and they don't necessarily point fingers. Just so you know.
That makes sense. That makes
Your
sense.
daughter's interest in communicating with you is to establish an ongoing relationship, not to get hung up on the moment she passed. Does that make sense to you?
It does.
Okay, so what else struck you, or what else did you find of value?
With the rainbows, definitely, because we have rainbows that show up on the carpet, on the walls, you know, just where there's no way that a rainbow should happen. And when you talked about her enthusiasm, and she was, you know, just always happy and very full of life and luminescent.
And death has not removed that from her. Spirits will often use rainbows because they can split light, because they live in the, you know, in the spectrum.
Yes.
And so, you know, these are all energy centers, and they will, you know, fracture light to give us those rainbows. That's where that comes from. You know, so if you have nothing in your house that will create rainbows, and sometimes even if you do, even if you have a prism that would, you know, create rainbows, the spirits will manipulate the light through the prism to give you rainbows that you can not even imagine. So they will do that to let us know they're around.
That just resonated. I just thank you so much for connecting us.
I'm really glad that you came here today and gave us all the experience of sort of how this happens. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. I appreciate it. I loved meeting your daughter.
Thank you.
So, Robin, I do think we're coming to the end of our time here.
This has been so wonderful. Thank you so very much.
You know, I'm delighted to be here. I'm going to be at an Afterlife conference. In fact, there's a photo of me talking to a lot of people. Boy, that lady in the glasses doesn't look so happy there at the moment, but that's all right. We'll pretend she's happy in that photo. Anyway, so in the Afterlife conference in June in Portland, I will be giving messages. Evan Alexander will be there. Raymond Moody will be there. Suzanne Northrup. August Wells will be there, 2 other wonderful mediums. So I'm very excited about the Afterlife Conference. People can go to the Afterlife Conference website. They can also go to my website, hollisterrand.com. And if you have any more questions, feel free to send me an email to hollisterrand@gmail.com. And my book hopefully will answer a lot of questions. I'm Not Dead, I'm Different. And it's in different languages as well, Portuguese and German. And I think Amazon ships all over the world. So you should be able to get it. And you can download it, too, off the net. Thank you so much, Robin, for being here. It's been, for having me here. I'm like thanking you, like it's my show. This is now the Hollister Rand show all of a sudden.
Your joy is contagious.
It's really the joy of the spirits. That is the truth.
Yeah, thank you.